So today we're going to work with integers and we're going to be adding and subtracting them. So let's go over what an integer is again, just as a reminder. So integers are numbers like 0, 1, 2, 3, or -1, -2. These are all integers. There are no pieces of numbers though. Pieces of numbers are fractions or decimals. So as long as it's -2 or -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up, or -2, -3, all the way down, those are all integers, okay? 0 is an interesting number because it's the only integer that's neither positive nor negative. So it's just neutral. And let's remember that word neutral for a second because 0 is a neutral number and we'll be getting back to that. Otherwise, integers are positive or negative. And no fractions or decimals, except in the case where a fraction or a decimal can be reduced back to an integer. So for instance, 3.0 really is just 3. And so 3.0 is considered an integer because it reduces down to 3. Or if you had, say, 24 over 12, yes, it's a fraction, but it can be reduced to an integer. 24 divided by 12 is 2. So even though 24 divided by 2 is in fraction form, we also consider it an integer because it reduces down to 2. I mean, if -24 was on top over 12, then this would be -2. And -2 is also an integer. So that's just a review of what integers are. And now we're going to add and subtract them. Now you've been adding and subtracting them for probably a long time already. You've been doing positive integers, like say 2 plus 1, that's 3. And I know that you didn't usually put this in front of each of the numbers, but you could have. A +2 plus a +1 is a +3. Now, because numbers that are positive and that don't have any sign in front of them are just assumed to be positive, we don't bother writing the little positives in front. But you could if you want to, like technically you could have if you wanted. So this is a totally fine statement if you want to leave it like that. When you come to negative numbers though, negative integers are going to have the negative symbol in front of it. Just don't assume that it's going to be a negative number unless there's a negative sign in front of it. So while the positive numbers, it's optional to put the positive sign, negative numbers, you have to have the negative. So let's just represent this in terms of, how about poker chips? Now I came up with some poker chips here. Here's some green ones, and I put a little putty on the back so they're easily stuck to the board. So if I had, and each one of these poker chips is going to be worth 1. So if I have 2 poker chips right next to each other, it's going to be worth 2 poker chips, okay? Or the value 2. So if I have 2 poker chips and I add it, and that's called an operation, by the way, addition and subtraction, as well as division and multiplication are called operations. So if the operation here is an addition symbol, and I want to add these 2 positives to this 1 positive, how many positives do I have? I have 3 positives. And I'll just go ahead and put the little positive sign there. Even though, since it's a positive number, I don't have to, but it's just good visual. Okay, how about this though? What if instead of working with positive numbers like this, we're going to work with negative numbers. So I came up with these poker chips that have a negative symbol. Each one of these poker chips is worth 1 negative. So if I have 2 of them together, I'm going to consider this 2 negatives. Or if you wanted to write it out, -2. Okay? I'm still going to use my addition operation, and I'll add another negative to it. So the question is, I have 2 negatives, and then I'm adding just 1 more negative. And the question is, well, it looks like I got 3 somethings here, but 3 what? 3 positives or 3 negatives? That's why I put a little question mark there. we have 3 negatives. So that means I have to put a sign there, and it has to be a negative. So 1, 2, 3 negatives. And in fact, if I want to, I could just put these over here like that. 3 negatives over there. Okay, so that's how you add negatives. Very similar to adding positives. Okay, what happens if you want to add positives and negatives together? That gets a little trickier. And I'm going to save that for the next video.